El Salvador will be the first country in Central America to have a cybersecurity law combined with the protection of personal data. El Salvador is at the cutting edge of technology.
Earlier this month, the administration of President Nayib Bukele rolled out a new legal framework purportedly designed to protect individuals' data privacy. It just so happens that the new law will also draw jagged new contours for what information gets to stay on the internet, sounding alarms among press freedom monitors in El Salvador. I'm Roman Gressier, the editor of El Faro English. This is our weekly podcast, Central American Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
globalism comes to die at CPAC, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes on El Faro English.
Happy belated Thanksgiving to our listeners in the United States. This week, El Salvador and Nicaragua are on our radar. In recent months, the Salvadoran government has suffered a series of brutal cyber attacks. In September, the hacktivist group calling itself Ciberinteligencia, SV, released the ID numbers, tax identifiers, employers, and salaries of almost 1 million people registered with the Salvadoran Social Security Institute. The group is known for showboating its hacktivism on its public Telegram channel and X account. On November 12th, the Bukele-controlled Legislative Assembly passed both a national cybersecurity law and a personal data protection law with no discussion. The data protection law opens new avenues for the Bukele administration to censor information from the internet, including journalistic publications that it categorizes as, quote, inexact. My El Faro colleague Gabriel Labrador reports on a new law's long shadow.
One of the main risks I found in this new law is Article 10. This article includes some provisions that could easily violate the right to freedom of expression, the press, and information. An individual will be able to ask for the elimination or withdrawal of their personal data from the internet when the data is, quote, inadequate, inaccurate, irrelevant, or outdated. This is something that can also be used by the legal representatives of any company or any legal entity.
The tech giant's Latin American cloud service branch signed a $500 million contract with the Salvadoran government and opened an office in San Salvador in April. The contract has been touted by both the Bukele administration and U.S. Embassy. The law will also touch platforms like Telegram, Gabo reports. This year, internet monitors have reported multiple interruptions of Telegram services in El Salvador, like in June during Bukele's swearing in to an unconstitutional second term, or again in September, around the time of journalistic revelations that the presidency had ordered espionage 4 years ago against journalists and political opponents. That, in turn, around the same time as a Pegasus operator was active in El Salvador. This is Gabo again.
Digital rights advocates told me that the big question here is what's going to be considered subject to removal. And for this, it's important to say that the law also creates a new authority, the State Cybersecurity Agency, which is entitled to act like a judge when an individual or a legal entity alleges that some information should be deleted. In short, I can imagine some politicians, lawmakers, local authorities, even President Bukele himself, someone content, satisfied with the new law.
Read his full report in our A1 front page story at elfaro.net/en. The new law's insistence that journalistic reports be, quote, exact, and then, only then, can press freedom be protected, is similar to Nicaragua, where, as we discussed last week, the criminalization of, quote, fake news will soon be enshrined in the Constitution. The Ortega Murillo regime has used this tool of lawfare to chase the independent Nicaraguan press into exile. God placed a giant treasure underneath our feet. El Salvador potentially has the gold deposits of greatest density per square kilometer in the world. That's Nayib Bukele posting to his X account Wednesday afternoon. He continued, quote, "We are the only country in the world with a total prohibition on metallic mining. Absurd." El Salvador banned mining in 2017 after years of organizing by environmentalists. Vidalina Morales is president of the Economic and Social Development Association in Santa Marta, or ADES by its initials in Spanish. In episode 1, we covered the exoneration in October of 5 ADES leaders in a criminal case against them mounted by the Bukele-controlled Attorney General's office. Prosecutors have since announced that they are appealing that verdict. Morales told El Faro in an interview last October that, quote, "If mining returns, more criminalization and death await us." In Guatemala, a moratorium on metallic mining sits atop Indigenous authorities' priorities in their collaboration with the Arevalo administration. As of October, 2 proposals are being discussed in Congress and have advanced beyond the Energy and Mining Committee. In Nicaragua, writes Max Granger in a column for El Faro English published Wednesday, Biden's sanctions on the economically paramount national gold industry have done little to curb toxic mining or settler violence. He writes, "A modern-day gold rush is poisoning ecosystems and terrorizing indigenous and Afro-descendant communities in Nicaragua as corporations and settlers invade autonomous territories and nature reserves, stealing land and extracting profits in a lucrative business environment enforced through state and paramilitary violence." Hey, before we get to our last segment, we've been thinking about X, the social media company. And we're ready to spread our wings. We're staying on X, but El Faro English has started posting on Blue Sky too. We're eager to connect and help build a space for discussion on the present, past, and future of Central America. Join us. Last, Nayib Bukele's financial fortunes are improving. Bloomberg reports that El Salvador could be on the verge of locking down a staff-level agreement with the IMF worth about $1.4 billion in the coming weeks. That would significantly buoy the Bukele administration, as it has promised to address the country's significant economic challenges but faces a considerable debt burden. The agency Moody's upgraded El Salvador's credit rating on Tuesday, writing that, quote, "The outlook remains stable." This is a major turnaround from the low point in the IMF negotiations in 2022, when the Bukele administration and credit rating agencies thought that broad default on the sovereign debt was a distinct short or medium-term possibility. The IMF, which is swayed by the US government's position, has long cited concerns about the Bitcoin law, which remains in effect, and the lack of government transparency as stumbling blocks to a debt refinancing deal. Bukele was not happy about it, even taking public shots at the IMF and posting Bitcoin memes to rebuff the tough talk. But the talks have thawed, in parallel to Bukele's relationship with Biden. A year ago now, El Salvador admitted to hiring the IMF's former Latin America director to spur the negotiations amid major crypto industry turmoil. The IMF's muted tone in San Salvador is of little surprise. At the end of last week, after concluding its Article 4 mission to Nicaragua, staff from the fund claimed that, quote, "The authorities have taken steps to improve the anti-corruption framework." In new constitutional reforms, Ortega and Murillo are placing the judiciary and legislature under the power of the executive. The fund did include a line recommending, quote, "significantly improving the rule of law and safeguarding judicial independence to support investors' confidence." But the top line of the IMF's report stated, "Nicaragua is maintaining robust economic performance." Thanks for listening to Central American Minutes. I wrote today's episode with production and original soundtrack by Omnion. It's Black Friday, and you may have your wallet nearby. Will you chip in today to El Faro English to help us keep translating Central America? Whatever you can contribute makes a difference for independent, intrepid journalism in our region. Go to support.elfaro.net and consider joining our crowdfunding community. And thank you for helping make our journalism possible. We'll be back next week. Un abrazo.